Hello and welcome to the November virtual meeting for Career Tech Education. Before we get too in depth, I want to remind you that I am thankful for everybody's role in our success in career education, working day in, day out, and countless hours to make sure we are successful with all students at our Omaha South High School. And I want to remind you the mission of Omaha South High School is to prepare all students to reach their highest potential for academics, develop skills in technology, demonstrate creative expression, and practice respect for others. In reaching those goals, we want to increase the number of South High School students on track for graduation, increase the number of Omaha South High students that are connected to the community. Omaha South High School educators will incorporate and increase the use of best instructional practices from the district. And Omaha South High School will increase transparency and communication with stakeholders and those in the community. And I think we continue to do a successful job. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your day in, day out hard work, dedication to success of the students at Omaha South High School. As I work my way around the school and observe each one of you in your classes, I see success every day with working with students when I go into classrooms, no matter where I'm at in the building, no matter what part of the time of day that I am visiting those classrooms, anywhere from students doing hands-on projects and skills, down in skilled and technical sciences, or creating their projects, putting them to use in different competitions. As I come up to the third floor, I see a lot of success in classrooms with parenting, working with children and youth to create projects and skills that otherwise would have never happened in a kitchen. And a lot of garlic. I smelled a lot of garlic the other day that was pretty strong, but I went in those classrooms and it was success all over the classroom with those students. Everybody was participating and engaged. In the human growth, I see students engage in the topics that they need to be to meet the state and district standards. And when I come up on the fourth floor, I see students engage with technology. Even though sometimes we might have frustration with growth and using some of the products, I still see all our team working together to have successful strategies and engagement with students in the classroom. So I want to remind you that your success and your determination is great, and I appreciate everybody's teamwork to create a successful learning atmosphere for those students at Omaha South High School. As we work on strategies this month to have successful classrooms, behavior, and engagement for students, I read through some of your notes and comments that you made from the meeting that we had as a school last Monday. And I want to share with you your thoughts that everybody continues to grow and look for those strategies that are successful. This month we're going to look at gradual release of instruction on how we use modeled instruction, shared instruction, guided practice, independent practice, and a check for understanding. We want to make sure that dialogue and those different strategies are continued to interact between each other. They're not a separate strategy. As we go from shared to guided, we might go back into shared because some students might not get those strategies, and we want to make sure all students have the opportunity to be successful. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth on these strategies, talk about them. I'm going to try to find a video that the district has put out that will allow you to reflect, and then the discussion questions that I'm going to follow up with our virtual meeting are topics to help you grow, and we will try to look back at those strategies in December. So we'll go through these here shortly, look at some ideas and thoughts, and come back and summarize what we've discussed. First off, we look at modeled instruction. Modeled instruction by the district is considered the teacher explains and model strategies and content indicating how it relates to current learning needs and prior knowledge. It's a reflection that takes place. It is not a lecture. Please remember that that's a separation. You're looking for engagement. You are not stuck at the front of the classroom, but you are working your way around the classroom to see engagement from students. Think alouds, practice problems, Cornell notes, chunking sections together, taking Cornell notes and writing them through to help. When a teacher uses this model instruction, it makes learning visible, gives students a concrete model of expected learning, and fosters Metacognition, it looks for growth. A lot of teachers I see using these strategies during note taking to help get those students engaged in expected behavior with the success of those students. Next up is shared instruction. Teacher and students are working together to get their projects completed and the task measured with some kind of assessment to make sure there's understanding going on. The description from the district is that teachers encourage students' participation by asking questions to check for understanding. Students are in a whole group, small groups, in pairs, elbow partners at tables, in groups. Examples the district use that I've seen is predicting, pair share partners, especially if you're in a class where students like to talk. Maybe this is a good time where students partner up in pairs or threes and they can share ideas for growth and communicate what they have and then report back out to the group for those different measurements. But it's a continued growth that might have to go back to modeled instruction to make sure that the understanding is there. But it's a check too to see if the tools and indicated measurements of benchmarks are being met for the instruction to make sure students have an idea about what is taking place. Next up is guided practice, and I think we do a great job on guided practice because as I go around the classrooms, I see students making projects on their own. I see students in the kitchen doing tasks on their own or as a group, and I see students on technology devices creating their own apps, their own programs, their own designs. We may struggle with that, we think, because students may not always get what we're intended to. That's where we might swing back up to shared instruction. Yeah, it might take some time to do shared instruction because we're working our way around the classroom, and if we have a room of 20 or 30 students, it may seem more overwhelming. So at a time and place, we may pause everybody at the same time and bring everybody back to modeled instruction, show everybody for 1 or 2 minutes about what should be taking place, and then swing back to shared and guided practice. All of those help the learner hit the benchmarks and intended standards that should be reached, put out by the Department of Education, and making sure they're being successful in your classroom. When we look at independent practice, this is not letting the students go off on their own to say, we want to make sure that they're doing what's right. I was in another school observing a different class, and the teacher said, okay, it's independent practice, and that teacher stood in the front of the classroom, did not work their way around the classroom to make sure students were on task, let them go. And you could tell through the observation that students really didn't have an idea how to read, if they were supposed to be doing a reading assessment or any of the tasks. So when you do independent practice, you want to work your way around the room to make sure students have an idea about what's taking place, what their expectation is, and the check for understanding might be dialogue to say, do you understand what these terms are? Do you understand what programs are expected to be written? Or are you on task? Do you need assistance? And that's where you come back up to guided or shared. But they all come back to making sure that the student understands what is taking place in the classroom. And don't feel overwhelmed if the student doesn't get it the first or second time, because all classrooms I've been in, teachers that made sure the students were getting it were saying, getting the assigned benchmark or assessment that was going to be measured, were saying in multiple different ways, multiple different times, at least 5 to 7 times, students were finally able to grasp what was expected. So there's a swing to remember that through these different instructions, you're going back and forth with patience to make sure that those students are able to follow the intended tasks that you want, and you're continuing to check for understanding for all those students to be successful in our classroom. The final piece would be to check for understanding. Check for understanding can be a quick question, but be very careful when you ask questions for understanding, because some students may want to blurt out answers, or it might go quiet in your classroom for 10-15 seconds. And actually, if you think back to our October meeting we had in the skill and technical science room, I actually did that as part of our discussion. It was quiet for about 10 seconds before a couple of staff members were able to jump in with some thoughts and dialogue. And that's all I was doing, was checking for understanding to make sure we were on the same page for what we needed for career tech education. Other forms could be multiple choice assessments, written summative assessments. We want to make sure that we limit multiple choice, but we want to make sure students are prepared for multiple choice assessments such as the ACT or SAT, because those are standardized tests that we want to make sure all students are prepared for. Other ways could be journal writings, essay writings. It is not an assessment. It's not necessarily just taking notes and turning those in. Those are check for understandings that we could consider as homework. If there's an assessment over notes that has reflection, thought process, and looking for benchmarks, that could be considered a great way and a great tool to check for understanding that we should use as a grading for assessment. There's multiple different forms that I've seen in grades that I have seen on the grade book and Infinite Campus, but I want to make sure that everybody continues to try to engage all students here at Omaha South High School. Now the fun part. I always encourage you guys to try something new, and ladies to try something new in your classroom to see if it works. If it doesn't work, kind of reflect on it and think about why. This little guy is Lewis. He's our family dog. He's about 5, maybe 6 months old. I think 6 months. Modeled instruction. How do you model instruction with a dog? You try to teach him manners and behaviors. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes some long hours sometimes, but overall it's great because he starts to listen, even though he likes to chew on my fingers, in different strategies that you think may work, but really sometimes you look back and you reflect and you say, well, they didn't work. When we do shared instruction to teach a student or an animal a benchmark or expectation that is a desired outcome, use strategies to predict, to skim, to quick notes, to actually take the dog, maybe sit with him, and see what ways you can learn as well as they can learn. Guided practice, 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 and you get that desired outcome for the behavior that's there. And sometimes I have to go back, and we have to go back to shared instruction to say, no, this is what we need you to do. We don't need you to hop on a dining room table. We need you to come down. And after talking and seeing those different verbal cues, the expectation is there for that dog or for that student. Independent practice is great because you can sit back and actually watch and see the instruction take place. Our family dog isn't there yet. Will he be there? Oh, he'll be there sometime, but it's going to take a little bit more practice and a little bit more behavior. When I check for understanding, it's hard to communicate sometimes, but that desired outcome allows us all to be successful. And this is my project, and I hope that you guys and ladies are able to try different strategies in your classroom to see how to get all students engaged and help them be successful at Omaha South High School. This is going to conclude my strategies to share with you for our November virtual meeting, but I want to remind you I'm going to have a discussion of what we learn or takeaways from this, but I'm also going to show another video. It's about 5 to 7 minutes long on how a teacher in a different school district uses gradual release of instruction as a tool, gives us a way to model and kind of reflect back on how we can all be successful and use growing points to help use different strategies in our classroom. Why? Because again, at Omaha South High School, our mission is to prepare all students to reach their highest academic potential, develop skills in technology, demonstrate creative expression, and practice respect for others. Thanks again, and remember, my door is always open if you have questions, comments, thoughts, or concerns. And thanks again for each and every one of you for what you do for the students here at Omaha South High School.